One of the reasons why people get frustrated with communication is because we are not communicating in the way in which we'd like. One of the behaviors that women do is they practice the read my mind thing. And that means that, let's say they're in a relationship with a partner, husband, wife, whatever. They feel that the other party should know things, right? They should be able to know. And I always called that, well, they can't read your mind, but that's what would be required in order to know those things. You deciding that someone should know something does not mean that they will know it. And I've seen this happen so many times with women. They just don't say anything at all. They get angry, and then they behave passive aggressively, and then they become more and more angry over time, but they absolutely will not speak up for themselves no matter what, and they're pretty adamant about not speaking up for themselves. So what are some of the things that hold women back from, or hold anyone back from speaking up for themselves? Number one, I don't want to look like I'm the bad guy. Number two, because then you won't like me, you'll hate me, and I don't want you to be mad at me. Number three, I'm not used to having difficult conversations. I don't like confrontation. And I feel like those are the big three. That's how I used to feel. I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want to seem like I was the bad guy. And I didn't want the other person to be mad at me. One of the things that helped me to realign my thinking was this. I took note of how the other person seemed to be totally fine. They weren't like seething in anger over the thing that I was angry about. And I realized, this person's giving me information. I'm not really receiving it. On the outside, I acted like everything was okay, but on the inside, I was really unhappy. And why should I be unhappy? I don't want the other person to be unhappy, but I don't want to be unhappy either. So going on the journey to improve on your communication, it is an act of self-love. You are showing that you matter just as much as the other person matters. So you don't want to be the bad guy, but guess what? In your mind, that guy is now the bad guy. Isn't that how it works? How could this person say this? How could they do that? Now, if you say something, you're the bad guy, wasn't that person the bad? You're kind of feeling that way, that person is now the bad guy, and that's why you feel how you feel. So I don't think that was that person's intention to be the bad guy, especially on how they act. So if he's already the bad guy, then you may as well be the bad guy for 2 seconds while you express yourself. You could look at it that way. But it is an act of self-love. You care enough about how you feel so that what someone else feels about how you feel will then become, almost irrelevant. Almost irrelevant. Because when you take a look at how the other person responds before you've said anything, it's as if you're almost irrelevant, really. And that's how you feel, and that's where some of the angry, resentful feelings come from. So it's just important to keep that in the back of your mind. When you speak up for yourself, you are loving yourself. You don't want to be abused. You don't want to feel uncomfortable. And you don't want to act like you're the only one doing something and the other person's not helping or contributing, or the other person isn't using language that is appropriate in how you want to be treated or how you want to be spoken to. How you communicate is not only what you say, but how you say it is so extremely important. So let's say that you have an issue you want to address with someone. Let's say yesterday you were at work and someone treated you in a certain way that you didn't like. And you were at work, you didn't know what to do. So And you know, you can't just go off on the person and say whatever you want, because you don't want to get in trouble for using the wrong language or losing your temper or anything like that. I have found it immensely helpful to address things in the moment that it happens. And maybe you're not comfortable with that. That's okay. Your other option is to accept what was said to you, go home, write it all out, write out your response, because now you're not that angry. You're upset about it, but you're not so angry because it hasn't happened over a period of days, weeks, months, years yet. So you write it out, you write down your response, and you edit your response. Edit it heavily so that you don't say something that is inappropriate. And now that you're home, you have all the time in the world to think about what your response will be. So that's a starting point. Now, when you first speak up for yourself, it's not easy. It is scary. I remember it was a million years ago, I feel like, but I remember it felt scary. I felt scared to even approach the person, and I don't even remember who it was or what it was, but I just remember the feeling surrounding that. I felt scared to tell the person I'd like to speak to them, which is how I started. I said, I'd like to speak to you on something. I'd like to speak to you about something. And that alone was scary because I knew it was coming. And for me, yeah. So you know what? You're going to have to conquer that fear. How much do you love yourself? Do you love yourself enough to have a conversation with someone about a topic that makes you uncomfortable? Because in the beginning, you're going to be uncomfortable. The upside is anything that you do, you will always get better at it as long as you keep doing it. The first time I had a difficult conversation, it was not easy. It was the hardest conversation because inside I was like really scared. The second time, it was not easy, but I had done it before, so it wasn't the worst anymore. The third time, it wasn't easy, but I did it 2 other times, and this was going to be a thing. And then the fourth time, I realized this is just something I'm just going to have to get used to. It's better than the first, second, and third time. And let me tell you, by your fourth time of having a difficult conversation, you know that this is going to be a thing. This is something I can do. This is something I will continue to do because I don't want to be uncomfortable or unhappy any more than anyone else does. So just keep that in mind. No, your first step is never going to be easy, but you got to start somewhere. So baby steps. Write it out. Write down your concern. Set up a time with the individual. I'd like to have a conversation with you. When? Do you have time right now? No. What about in an hour? Make sure you commit and make sure you get it done. And sometimes the person will get an inkling that of what's up, something that they might not like, and they might not want to hear it, so they'll try to avoid you. So make sure you have like a few sentences to just say your piece if you need to. It doesn't always have to be a long, drawn-out conversation, but you can certainly say, you know what, Sally Mae, you said a couple things to me that I was uncomfortable with yesterday. I just want to make it clear. I do not like to be spoken to that way. I don't speak to you that way. I would like the same respect in return. And it's simple as that, the end. And so, yeah, that's the long and the short of it. And that's something to get the ball rolling. If you're someone that has a little difficulty speaking up for yourself or even starting the conversation, write out your thoughts and ideas. Make sure you're thorough. Make sure you're specific. Have a couple of points in mind, 1, 2, or 3. Don't make it, if it's your first time, don't make it a lengthy process. Just the main ideas. And your response to each of the issues. And then let that be the end of it. Don't get into a heated debate, and have the goal set in mind I'm not going to get into a heated debate. I'm not going to get into a heated discussion. And if I get jumbled with my words, I'm just going to say, you know what, this is how I feel, and I would like you to respect that. And just keep that in mind at the end of the day. If you feel like you're going to get scared and you're going to look stupid and you're going to forget what you wrote down, just remember, this is how I feel, and I would like you to respect that. Okay? All right. Have a good one.